There is a war going on inside the 2026 World Cup, and not a single ball has been kicked in it. No yellow cards, no VAR reviews, no arguments between coaches on the touchline. This war is happening in boardrooms, in hotel corridors, in closed-door player meetings, and in the hallways of power where money, politics, and football have been twisted together into something that barely resembles the sport millions of people around the world actually love. And the three teams most likely to win this whole thing, Spain, Argentina, and Brazil, are caught right in the middle of it. Let's start with what everyone can see. The 2026 World Cup is the largest in history. 48 teams, 104 matches, 16 host cities spread across 3 countries, the United States, Canada, and Mexico. The tournament runs for 39 days instead of the usual 32. For any team that goes all the way to the final, that means 8 wins instead of 7. One extra match sounds simple enough. But that one extra match is the difference between surviving a World Cup and being consumed by it. The heat alone was always going to be a factor. Scientists from the World Weather Attribution Research Group analyzed weather conditions for all 104 scheduled matches and found that nearly a quarter of them are likely to be played in temperatures exceeding the safety thresholds recommended by FIFPro, the Global Players Union. That's not a fringe prediction, it's a peer-reviewed analysis published months before the first kickoff. 5 matches in particular were flagged as potentially dangerous enough that player unions had formally advised they should not be played at all without additional protections. Stadiums in Atlanta, Houston, Miami, and multiple Mexican cities sit in some of the most punishing heat and humidity combinations a World Cup has ever been asked to operate inside. A coalition of 21 climate and physiology scientists wrote directly to FIFA, urging the organization to extend break times and implement aggressive cooling measures in locker rooms. FIFA's public response was to tell everyone to, and this is a direct quote from FIFA President Gianni Infantino, quote, "Chill." That response told you everything you need to know about how this organization operates right now. FIFA's actual answer to the heat problem was mandatory 3-minute hydration breaks in each half of every single match, regardless of temperature, regardless of whether the stadium has full air conditioning, regardless of anything. One blanket rule for 104 games in wildly different conditions. Spain head coach Luis de la Fuente pointed out before his team's draw with Cape Verde and Atlanta that the breaks made complete sense in real outdoor heat, but felt completely unnecessary inside a fully cooled stadium. It's a small comment on the surface. But underneath it sits a deeper frustration that has been building across multiple national teams for months. These coaches and players feel like they are being managed by a policy designed for television, not for football, because here is the part that changes everything. Those 3-minute hydration breaks are not just about player welfare. FIFA has given commercial broadcasters explicit permission to cut away to advertisements during every single one of those breaks. Every match. Both halves. That creates 208 new commercial windows across this tournament. 208. The New York Times reported that broadcasters will have up to 2 minutes and 10 seconds of ad time per break after the required buffer periods. FIFPro called this out before the tournament started. Netherlands captain Virgil van Dijk said it out loud in a post-match interview after his team's draw with Japan, noting that the breaks feel more like commercial timeouts than genuine player protection. Whether FIFA intended that perception or not, the reality is that hydration breaks at the 2026 World Cup are functioning like ad breaks in American football, structured stoppages that happen on a schedule in every game, generating revenue for broadcasters and sponsors with or without dangerous heat on the field. According to reporting from multiple outlets, including Fortune and The Athletic, this move opened up a multi-million-dollar revenue stream that had never existed before in World Cup history. FIFA sold viewing rights to private broadcasters globally, and all of them now have the ability to monetize these breaks. It is not player protection. It is a product redesign. This is the world Spain, Argentina, and Brazil are trying to win a championship inside. Spain arrived at this tournament as the top-ranked team in the world. Argentina arrived as defending champions, with Lionel Messi, 8-time Ballon d'Or winner, chasing what everyone understands is his final World Cup. Brazil arrived with a new identity under Carlo Ancelotti and a mountain of pressure after more than 2 decades without a title. All three teams have everything to play for, and all three have already felt this tournament's demands in ways previous World Cups never required. Messi came into camp training separately from the Argentina squad after suffering from muscle fatigue during Inter Miami's final matches before the World Cup break. The club confirmed it was fatigue-related and not a structural injury, but the Argentina Football Association had to publicly clarify his status before a single group stage match had been played. That is how thin the margin already is. Argentina's head coach Lionel Scaloni made clear before the tournament that Messi was not the only fitness concern in his squad. The accumulated load on these players from a brutal club season that ran deep into late spring left multiple members of the Argentina group managing some level of physical stress entering the tournament. Brazil's situation was, if anything, worse before they even arrived. Esteban was ruled out before the tournament began. Rodrigo was gone for the year with a torn ACL, an injury picked up during the punishing final stretch of Real Madrid's club season just weeks before the World Cup opened. Brazil came into this tournament with key attacking pieces missing, not because of anything that happened at the World Cup, but because the calendar leading into it had already done real damage. FIFPro's research from the 2022 World Cup found that 44% of players reported more physical fatigue and 53% felt at increased injury risk during the tournament window. The structural problem was already documented. The 2026 format made it worse. Spain's challenge is different, but equally real. Their roster is packed with players who just finished a demanding European club season. Players from La Liga, the Premier League, Serie A, all grinding through domestic competition, European nights, and national team qualifiers before arriving here with almost no real recovery window. FIFA had agreed with the Players' Union ahead of this tournament that players should have a minimum of 72 hours of rest between matches and at least 21 days off at the end of each season. The agreement exists on paper. Whether it translated into actual rest for players on clubs playing 60 or more games a year is a separate question entirely. And this is where the political dimension of the 2026 World Cup starts to matter in ways that go beyond scheduling complaints. The man running FIFA, Gianni Infantino, has spent the past several years making choices that have reshaped what this organization actually is. Some of those choices are about football. Most of them are about something else entirely. French sports journalist Simon Bolelli published a book this year called FIFA Connection: Inquiry into the Infantino System, describing an organization built around personal loyalty, with FIFA's financial disbursements to national associations, each of which gets exactly one vote for FIFA president, functioning as a mechanism for keeping dissent quiet. All 211 member countries vote for FIFA president, whether that country is China or Samoa. Critics say that system makes structural reform nearly impossible from within. One disgruntled national football official, quoted by Fortune, described the situation plainly. It really is a cabal run by elites. The deeper political story is about Infantino's relationship with the Trump administration. Infantino has called Donald Trump a close friend and repeatedly described their relationship as absolutely essential to the success of this World Cup. FIFA opened a new office inside Trump Tower in New York City. Infantino has visited the Oval Office multiple times. At the December 2025 World Cup draw in Washington, Infantino presented Trump with what was officially described as a FIFA Peace Prize for his unwavering commitment to advancing peace and unity throughout the world. Multiple senior football journalists and media organizations described this moment as one of the most embarrassing displays of servility from a major sports organization in modern history. Le Monde called it a farce. The Guardian's reporting went further, describing Infantino as having placed FIFA in direct alignment with Trump's governance, not just as a guest, but as a participant in political messaging. This matters for the tournament because it has concrete consequences. FIFA's alignment with the Trump administration has been cited in connection with a visa scandal that blocked one of Africa's top referees from entering the United States to officiate at the World Cup. The full details of that case have not been officially confirmed by FIFA, but reporting from multiple European outlets described it as directly linked to the political climate around immigration enforcement and U.S. visa policy during Trump's second term. Dozens of mayors and local officials had already gathered in Washington in January of this year, gripped by anger over federal immigration enforcement operations, including the deaths of 2 U.S. citizens in Minneapolis, and worried about the signal it sent to the world about hosting a tournament that was supposed to celebrate global unity. Bipartisan concern about FIFA and Infantino was documented by the Associated Press just weeks before the tournament opened, with Republican Congressman Darren LaHood of Illinois, the chair of the Congressional Soccer Caucus, acknowledging that Infantino was, in his words, doing the job he needs to do in terms of cultivating the Trump administration. That is not a quote from a critic. That is a supporter framing an accommodation as a necessity. The Iran situation is a story of its own. Iran's participation in the tournament became one of the flashpoints Infantino addressed directly in his pre-tournament press conference in June, which began with a 35-minute speech before a limited question period. Human rights organizations had spent months calling on FIFA to ban Iran's national team over the Iranian government's violent suppression of protest movements and its treatment of women and dissidents. FIFA allowed Iran to compete. Infantino's public position was that football should not be used as a political instrument. Critics noted the selective application of that principle, particularly given FIFA's own banning of Russia from international competition following the invasion of Ukraine, and given Infantino's willingness to engage actively in Trump's political messaging. Then, there is the money. The 2026 World Cup is, by every measure, the most commercially ambitious tournament FIFA has ever staged. Fortune reported that this World Cup is expected to generate approximately $9 billion in revenue. FIFA under Infantino has vastly expanded its commercial portfolio, from the Club World Cup format to broadcasting deals to the hydration break ad windows. Critics tell Fortune that this growth has effectively quelled internal debate, with deep reluctance among national associations to challenge Infantino's decisions when FIFA remains the primary source of their operational funding. The 2034 World Cup was awarded to Saudi Arabia as the sole bidder after FIFA broke with precedent by requiring member nations to vote on the 2030 and 2034 hosts at the same meeting, with yes or no votes for both. Human rights groups protested. The vote passed. Saudi Arabia's relationship with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, whom Infantino has maintained close ties with, remained an unexamined part of that process. Back on the field, back in the heat, back where the players are actually trying to win this thing, the tournament structure creates a compounding problem for the favorites. A quarterfinal appearance for Spain, Argentina, or Brazil means playing 5 matches in approximately 3 weeks, with recovery periods squeezed between cities that can be hundreds of miles apart, sometimes more than 1,000 miles in different weather entirely. The travel demands alone are unlike any World Cup these players have experienced. Flying from a game in Miami's humidity, to a game in Kansas City's dry heat, to a game in Seattle's cooler temperatures within the span of a single group stage is not a sporting challenge. It is a logistical endurance test. For fans who followed their teams across 3 countries, the same wild swings in temperature and climate apply. Without the medical staff, ice baths, or specialized recovery protocols waiting at the hotel, stadium atmosphere is also shifting in ways supporters at this tournament have noticed. When a crowd is building towards something, a corner kick, a dangerous free kick, a moment where the momentum is about to crack open, a mandatory 3-minute hydration break interrupts it. Players drift apart. The moment dissipates. Play resumes. Virgil van Dijk's observation about commercial windows was not a complaint about water. It was a complaint about what happens to the emotional rhythm of a football match when it starts operating like an American sports broadcast. Compare all of this to what the 1994 World Cup, the last time these same stadiums were used, actually looked like. That tournament is still remembered for brutal heat in cities like Dallas, where temperatures pushed past 100 degrees during matches. FIFA learned lessons from 1994, scheduling more evening kickoffs in 2026 to reduce peak heat exposure. Evening games do reduce daytime temperature risk. They do not reduce humidity. They do not reduce travel stress. They do not reduce the accumulated fatigue load from a club season that ended weeks before kickoff. And they do not change the fact that in 2026, the finalists will need 8 wins to lift the trophy, when 7 was the standard for the entire history of the tournament before this year. What happens next depends on how deep the fatigue goes. The optimistic reading is that the teams and coaches have adapted. Rotation has been built into every serious squad's planning for months. FIFA adjusted kickoff times in several cities away from the hottest part of the afternoon. Coaches across the tournament have incorporated hydration breaks into their tactical planning rather than treating them as interruptions. The infrastructure around major national teams, the physios, the sports scientists, the nutritionists, has never been more advanced. If any group of athletes can manage these conditions, it is the players at this tournament. The pessimistic reading is grounded in what FIFPro's own data says. 44% of players at the 2022 World Cup reported higher physical fatigue. 53% felt more injury-prone. Those numbers came from a tournament with 32 teams, not 48. The expanded format added 16 teams and 40 additional matches to the overall competition. The teams that consistently win, Spain, Argentina, Brazil, are the ones playing deep into knockout rounds. That means the most decorated squads carry the highest cumulative load. A slight dip in sharpness during a quarterfinal or a semifinal, the kind that comes from accumulated fatigue rather than a single bad performance, could be the difference between lifting the trophy and going home. FIFA will point to its heat protocols and scheduling adjustments as evidence of responsible tournament management. Player unions will continue making the argument they have made for years, that the calendar needs structural reform, not in-season patches. Both things can be true. Neither of those truths will be resolved before July 19th, when the final is played. What is happening at the 2026 World Cup is not just a story about heat or scheduling or hydration breaks. It is a story about who football actually belongs to. It is a story about an organization that has spent a decade building commercial infrastructure, political alliances, and revenue streams, while the players those revenues depend on enter this tournament already depleted. It is a story about a FIFA president who opened a new office in Trump Tower and gave a sitting U.S. president a peace prize at the World Cup draw, while simultaneously telling critics to chill. It is a story about 21 climate scientists whose letter to FIFA went largely unanswered, about Africa's top referee blocked by a visa scandal connected to the same political machinery FIFA aligned itself with, about Saudi Arabia winning the 2034 bid through a process that bypassed normal competition. And inside all of that, 3 teams still have a chance to win the greatest prize in football. Spain, ranked number 1 in the world, playing their most technically refined football in years. Argentina, defending champions, carrying the weight of a generation's worth of love for a man who has given them everything the sport can give. Brazil, 2 decades without a title, betting everything on Carlo Ancelotti's ability to turn individual brilliance into a collective force. The conditions are harder than any previous World Cup demanded. The road to the final is longer. The political noise around this tournament is louder. And the stakes, for the players, for the fans, and for the sport itself, could not be higher.